Hello you amazing people, it is Riley LH here with another video, and we are back with the blue, slightly turboed Miata, and we're not doing anything cool today like intercooler piping, installing the turbo. We're just doing maintenance. I guess we are doing one cool thing. We're going to do the valve cover cut where we cut pretty much this front side of the valve cover off. A, so I can see my cams and make sure I'm not jumping timing, and B, eventually I'm going to get adjustable cam gear so I want to be able to adjust them on the fly. But the biggest thing is just to make sure this thing ain't jumping timing. I'm turboing this car, and yeah, that's going to be putting a lot more stress on the engine. It's going to be running a lot harder, so I rather just be able to see everything that's going on, and it just looks cool. I'm a racer, you don't have to tell me. As well, we're going to be fixing a couple oil leaks that we have. One of our really bad oil leaks is our oil dipstick tube. Yeah, so on the dipstick tube, there's not this O-ring up here, but that O-ring all the way down there is leaking, and it's leaking pretty bad. So we're going to pull that one out, replace the O-ring, and maybe put a little bit of RTV on it just to make sure that does not leak. As well, our cam angle sensor O-ring is leaking pretty bad, so before we turbo this car, we don't want to be pushing. So before we fully turbo this car, let's go ahead and do these couple bits of maintenance. All you really need for this is a 10 mil, a 12 mil, a torque wrench, some gray or black RTV, and all your gaskets and O-rings that you need for this. Now yes, it's good to just go ahead and replace your valve cover gasket whilst you're here, but mine's fresh, so why change it? As well, you're going to need a pair of pliers and maybe a screwdriver. So we're going to start off with the dipstick O-ring, and simply we're going to get a 10 millimeter. And there's going to be this little bracket right here which is holding the whole dipstick tube on. We're just going to break that loose. Now that we have that nut off, we simply just go ahead and slide the stud out the hole. And now we can just pull on the tube and the whole thing will come out. And yeah, no wonder that's leaking. That O-ring is practically solid at this point. Yet the thing's about as hard as a rock. We're going to have to cut that off most likely. So we're going to see how much it takes to actually get this O-ring off. We're first going to start with the flathead screwdriver, see if we can just get it to pop off. Oh god, this thing's so brittle. Oh, it came off with just a screwdriver. Yeah, O-rings aren't supposed to be stiff like this. It's supposed to be rubber, not plastic. And now we just put on the new O-ring. I think this size was 3/8 by 9/16, and it seems to work pretty well. I just got it out some random kid O'Reilly's. And as well, we're just going to put a little bit of gray RTV on it just to make sure it does not leak. But also, make sure you plug that hole with like a paper towel or something, because if not, you leak all of your oil out everywhere. Yeah, don't be dumb like me. Okay, so we just take a little bit of RTV, just wrap it around that O-ring. Now we can take that paper towel out and slide our new dipstick O-ring in. Okay, so now that we have that down there and set in properly, we're going to go ahead and put back on our nut. Tighten the whole thing up, and we can actually slide back in our dipstick. And now that that job's done, and we have spilled literally all of our oil out everywhere, we can move on to our cam sensor O-ring after I clean this up, or at least try to. So now that we finally cleaned the floor enough, and the dipstick O-ring is done, let's go ahead and take off this valve cover. So we're going to start off by just taking out all of our spark plugs. Not spark plugs themselves, just the wires. And then you're going to take off your PCV valve hose. Now we're going to break all these 10 mils loose, and we're going to do a crisscross pattern to make sure that we are not warping the valve cover at all. So we're going to start here in the center. And then we'll go to here. 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 Right here. Over here as well. We're getting close. And that's the last one. So now we just take out the bolts and the valve cover will come straight off. Grab this valve cover and it should pop right off. Now we're going to put something over the cams just to make sure we're not getting a bunch of dirt and debris in there. I normally just use a trash bag. So now we're going to go ahead and start taking off this cap so we can actually get our cam angle sensor off. But first, you want to go and make a little line like I have here from one point to the other. I've had this point for a very long time, and that's just going to make sure that you know where your timing is when you put it all back together. Otherwise, your engine's going to run terrible or just not at all. And now I do suggest going even preciser and getting a timing gun, which are honestly pretty cheap, and retiming your engine. Now we're going to grab a 12mm and we're going to take off this 12mm nut right at the back. Once you get that bolt off, we're going to take off these two 12mm bolts on the top. Then we can pull this cap off and our cam angle sensor will come out. And you can see how worn away that O-ring is. That one's also about practically solid. So we're just going to work this thing out and now we can actually get off this O-ring. We're going to try the same trick as we did last time. We're going to take a screwdriver and try to split it. Ah, that is so brittle. Yeah, this one's even worse than the last. That is horrible. No wonder that was leaking. When you go to order this O-ring, you're not going to be able to find it if you search up cam angle sensor O-ring at a normal parts store. So if you're trying to order it from somewhere like O'Reilly's, Napa, or something of the sort, put it in as distributor O-ring. But now we can open this package up and get our new O-ring on. Okay, so we're simply just going to slide this over and roll it on. Oh, that O-ring is so much girthier than the last. Now we can fish this thing back in there. Now we can fish this cam angle sensor back in there. Going ahead and line this up with the cam itself. Line that flat little tooth up with the cam itself and slide that in. Now we're going to get all the old RTV off this cap. And now we can reinstall the cap. Now we're going to chuck these two bolts back in. Just snug them down. Now we're going to go ahead and line this back up and put back in that back bolt. Now we're going to torque both these bolts down to 55 pound-inch. Now we're trying to get our timing as perfect as possible, and then we'll go and snug down this bolt in the rear. And now we're going to take back off this trash bag, and we're just going to take a razor blade or something of the sort and clean up this gasket surface, make sure all that old RTV is gone. Okay, so now we're actually doing the valve cover cut, and what we're going to do is we're going to mark it at every 1 and about 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to go along the whole valve cover, just marking it to make sure we have a straight, even cut all along. Now if you want, you can go ahead and draw a line connecting all of these dots. Now that we have that line, we're simply just going to take an angle grinder and cut across. And now we have lopped off the front of the valve cover. I kind of just want to hang that somewhere. And now this is aluminum, so it cuts very, very easy, which is a pro and a con. It cuts very easy, so it's easy to get cut through it, but it's also very easy to jack it up. But now let's go ahead and test it on the car, because I don't know if I want this front lip or if I want to cut it all the way back flush. So we are going to keep the bag over the cams just to make sure that we are not getting in a bunch of metal shavings over them and in them. But we're just going to go ahead and chuck this over, see what it looks like. Ooh, that looks really good. Let me pull off this front cover and see what that looks like. Okay, so I know what I like more. I like having the cover off more, but I kind of like the bottom part of the cover. So I think I'm going to chop the bottom part of this cover off and just leave the top and just leave the bottom part. So we're going to pull this back off and we're going to cut it about there-ish. Now we're simply going to cut this top half off. Okay, now those are two pieces. We're simply just going to clean this one up. Honestly, I think that looks perfect and sums it all up. But we're not going to go ahead and chuck that on fully yet. We are going to chuck some paint on it because, yeah, this thing's pretty jacked up. And as well, we're going to take back off this valve cover, sandblast it, and repaint it. Okay, so now that we have the whole valve cover actually sanded down, now it's actually time to go and add some base coat to it. So now it's actually time to add color, and we are using this VHT Wrinkle Black. It's a high temperature wrinkle black, and I have used a flat black high temp paint, and then I went over it with a bed liner, and that looked really good, but I'm excited to use like a proper wrinkle paint. So we're going to do a decently thick first coat, and it should wrinkle up, and then we'll do the rest of our coats as well. In total, we want to do 3 coats. Now, a lot of time passed between that last clip and now, and clearly a lot changed. But the valve cover is done, and now it's not on the motor because it's all pulled out right now. But for the few months that I had the valve cover on, it looked great. And it will be going back on once we get the motor all reassembled, and I really love this finish. Now, I did do gold lettering, and I simply just took some paint and put it on a little Q-tip and dabbed it in there. So now we have a nice black with gold lettering, and it looks so good. But if you guys did learn something from this video, or just purely enjoyed it, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, it would mean the world to me, and I hope you guys have a great day. See you guys on next time. Peace out.